What's going on, guys? Today I'm going to explain every abnormal Titan that's made an appearance in the Attack on Titan anime. Over the years we've seen how Titans come in many different shapes and sizes, and while it would be easy to assume that all the freaky looking ones must be abnormal, that's definitely not always the case. Whereas normal pure Titans can be expected to walk a certain way and eat whoever's in front of them, abnormals will deviate from one or both of those characteristics. For example, they might purposefully walk past one person so they can eat someone else instead, or they might do crazy stuff like climbing up trees, jumping like a madman, or hyping themselves up as they go into battle. As we'll see in the video, there are other things that make them different, but the point is that a Titan doesn't need to have a weird face or look like a character from Breaking Bad to be abnormal, but rather their behavior and the way they move are the main factors. From this point on, I'll be explaining the different abnormals that have made their marks on Attack on Titan, but before we get into it, don't forget to sub if you haven't already, as I plan to gradually explain everything worth knowing about this series. Also, I want to thank Surfshark for sponsoring this video, which should be the go-to VPN for any of you looking to protect your online privacy. Whether it be hackers, advertisers, or even the government, there's always someone these days who wants to track our online movements, but Surfshark secures your data by encrypting all information sent between your devices and the internet. They do such a good job that Surfshark was recently rated as the best VPN for security by PC Mag, and what makes this even better is that it's the only major VPN that you can install on unlimited devices for just one subscription. I've personally been using the app on both my phone and laptop for over 4 months now, and besides protecting my data wherever I am, the interface in general is just really smooth and easy to understand. For a limited time, by going to surfshark.deal/turtlequirk, you can get a mind-blowing 83% off a 2-year plan, plus 3 months extra for free, which in simple terms means your subscription will work out to just $2.21 a month. Understandably, this deal is only available for a very limited time, so click the link in the description and use code TURTLEQUIRK if you want a cheap way to protect your online privacy today. Okay, so in no particular order, the first abnormal in this video is often referred to as the Talking Titan, but its weird behavior goes way beyond the fact that it can speak. To this day, there are certain things that only this pure Titan has been shown to do, including mourning the death of someone it killed, running away from people instead of running towards them, and trying its hardest to fight against its Titan instincts. Initially, this abnormal was introduced in a special one-off chapter written by Isayama himself, which was then later adapted and expanded upon during an OVA. However, in order to fully explain this Titan, we need to flashback even further than this. Around 60 years before the start of the series, Ymir was a false prophet living in Marley, who was worshipped by a group of loyal followers. Those followers believed she was a descendant of royal blood, and among them was this woman who would one day become the Talking Titan. Once the group was discovered by the Marlyean authorities, everyone involved was sent to Paradis Island, and this lady was seen directly next to Ymir before they were turned into pure Titans. In the manga, we saw the result of their transformations, with the Talking Titan crawling beside the Ymir Titan, and following this moment they presumably went their separate ways. Flash forward decades later, and this abnormal was just chilling in the woods when it encountered a member of the Survey Corps who was stranded in Titan territory without a horse. By pure coincidence, this particular scout had a strong physical resemblance to Ymir, even down to the freckles, and because of this, the Talking Titan mistakenly believed it was Ymir herself. That's why, rather than immediately trying to eat her like a normal Titan would, the abnormal spent time heavily breathing, collecting its thoughts, and eventually speaking. The first words to come out its mouth were "subject of Ymir," which in hindsight was a massive hint as to the nature of all Eldians, but at the time this chapter came out, there wasn't enough information to make it make sense. After that, it referred to the scout as Lady Ymir and bowed down as a sign of respect, something the members of the cult all used to do when they were human. Anyway, the abnormal went through a range of emotions during this interaction as it tried to fight against the natural urge to eat the scout, literally tearing away at its own skin to suppress the instinct. Sadly though, in the end it couldn't resist and ate the girl's head as she documented the details of what happened in her notebook. This same notebook was discovered by Captain Levi a year later, but before we get into that, it's worth noting that instead of eating the rest of the body, the abnormal buried it inside a tree as another sign of respect. The area around this tree then essentially became the Titan's home, as the OVA showed that it didn't like to venture too far away from it, and if it did then it would try to run back there as soon as possible. Hanji and a few other scouts were able to follow this abnormal all the way to the burial site, and in the process they also found the notebook which documented everything the Titan had said. After reading the journal, Hanji became aware that the name Ymir had some sort of relevance to the Titans, hence why in season 2 she was incredibly shocked to learn that one of the new scouts had that same name. Last thing to mention on the Talking Titan is that although its fate was unknown in the original chapter written by Isayama, the OVA added this extra scene in which Levi cuts its nape. Next up, in season 4, the wine that contained Zeke's spinal fluid had been drunk by a lot of people, including the 30 soldiers who were meant to be making sure he didn't escape. As I explained earlier, abnormals behave or move in unique ways, and through the power of Pars, the Beast Titan was able to make abnormals specifically for the forest environment. Whereas regular pure Titans either struggle to climb trees or just straight up can't do it, Zeke created ones that could easily climb and swing between them at ridiculous speeds. When making Titans, Zeke clearly has some kind of ability to choose whether or not to give them abnormal characteristics, because we all know that if those soldiers had been turned into Titans the normal way, you'd be lucky if even one of them could climb trees. Following this, we have what is comfortably the largest pure Titan to ever exist, and that is of course the Rodrice Titan. According to Armin, it was double the size of the Colossal, which makes it around 120 meters tall, and like certain other abnormals, its body proportions just didn't make any sense. If we zoom in on this image here, you can see that its skinny chicken legs are not built to support this super long torso, and as a result, the Titan couldn't actually stand without holding onto the walls. This is why it literally crawled along the ground instead of walking normally, resulting in its face being ripped off because of the friction, and its gross Titan organs obviously fell all over the place. Forgetting its massive size for a second, there are a few other things that also make this Titan super weird, with the first being the fact that it chose to ignore nearby humans. Once the rampage began, Rod never even attempted to eat any of the people who were closest to him, but rather he preferred to crawl for hours until he reached the highly populated Orville district that was miles away. On top of that, the Rice Titan's body emitted a super hot steam similar to what the Colossal can do, hence why the trees began to catch fire whenever he approached, and why the scouts had to douse themselves in cold water. Anyway, it was implied by Kenny Ackerman that the reason Rod became so large was due to him licking the Titan transformation serum off the floor instead of injecting it properly, cause if you don't do it right, then stuff like this is a possibility. One other interesting thing about this abnormal is that when Historia dealt the finishing blow to his nape, she was able to see certain memories from his life, ranging from his childhood all the way till nearly the present day. This is a phenomenon that has never occurred when other pure Titans have been killed, but given that they're both of royal blood, we have to assume that that is somehow the reason. Moving over to the Jumping Titan now, I actually love this abnormal because the way it changed the whole vibe of the episode, it just perfectly encapsulates what made early Attack on Titan so amazing. Before the Jumping Titan appeared, the mood was generally hopeful, with Eren talking about how quickly they could rise through the ranks, and Thomas suggesting they should do a challenge to see who could kill the most Titans. The heroic background music played as the sun shined down on these guys, but a second later the abnormal Titan appears, the music stops, and Thomas is eaten alive while his friends can only stand there and watch. In less than a few minutes, we went from nervous excitement to completely traumatized, while the abnormal then just got to walk away like nothing happened. Much later on, the Jumping Titan was killed by Eren as revenge, with the Attack Titan biting into its nape with full force and then just throwing the body away. In Season 3, there was a different abnormal created by the Marlyeans, and much like Rodrice, its movement was severely impaired by having legs that couldn't support its weight. The sad thing about this particular Titan is that it was crawling for an unknown number of years trying to reach the wall, and at some point it just gave up and gradually went dead behind the eyes. When approached by the scouts, it never once diverted its eyes away from the ground, showing that even the presence of people was no longer something that could awaken its Titan instincts or even its human instincts, it was just an empty shell. While the fate of this Titan was never revealed, in my head there are two realistic options. Either they put it out of its misery on their return to the walls, or they left it there for years in the hope that one day something would turn it back into a human. Judging by how Eren acted towards it in the anime, and considering that another Titan was also given the same treatment, I'd say the second option is a strong possibility, but let me know what you think in the comments down below. The next abnormals appeared during the attack on Utgard Castle in Season 2, and even for abnormals, their behavior is virtually unexplainable. Although both abnormals were created by Zeke, that in itself doesn't explain why they would attack each other, as, he gains nothing by making two of his creations fight between themselves. My purely speculative guess is that these two might have actually been young siblings back in Ragako Village, as the way they were interacting kind of reminded me of kids play fighting, just on a larger and more violent scale. From what I remember, this was the first and only time that two pure Titans just randomly started fighting without being given instructions, and them being siblings, it would make some sort of sense, but ultimately that is just a theory. Anyhow, one thing I forgot to mention is that technically speaking, every single Titan Zeke makes is an abnormal, even the ones that seem normal, since all of them are able to function at night when the moon is out. This is something regular pure Titans can't do as they need sunlight to operate, whereas Titans made by the Beast can move in both sunlight and moonlight, making all of them abnormals by definition. That being said though, some of them are clearly more unpredictable than others, with a notable example being Connie's mother, who was the second talking pure Titan in the series. On Connie's return to Ragako, this Titan famously said welcome home to her son, proving that she retained some connection to her human consciousness. What was funny about this whole thing was the way Reiner definitely also heard the Titan speak, but had to gaslight Connie and make him seem like he was crazy for hearing something that they both 100% heard. The design of Connie's mother's Titan was unique due to the exposed ribcage and skinny limbs, meaning it was unable to move and was therefore left alive in the village as it didn't really present a threat to anyone. Other especially weird abnormals made by Zeke include the Posing Titan, the Gymnast Titan, and the But Ugly Titan that had his head partially exploded by the man himself. During the 57th expedition beyond the walls, we saw a couple more abnormals not made by the Beast Titan, the first of which was this freak who was resting inside a derelict house. It's no exaggeration to say that this Titan was inches away from killing Sasha, and what made it abnormal was the unique way its legs allowed it to maneuver on all fours. This Titan was eventually knocked out by being led into a tree, however because the nape was never destroyed we can assume it survived until presumably being killed by the executioner from hell at some point. A different Titan then appeared immediately afterwards, and besides walking like it has severe constipation, this abnormal ignored the people around it in favour of heading towards the centre of the formation. While it was quickly dealt with by experienced soldiers, the celebrations didn't last long because Annie appeared like a minute later, and yeah, we all know what happens after that. Flashing back to earlier that same season, Mikasa killed an abnormal in Trost that was wildly sprinting towards the innocent civilians, and this was the moment that inspired Louise to become a scout, as well as being Mikasa's very first on-screen Titan kill. In the Clash of the Titans, Ymir pointed out this abnormal here, who was patiently observing the 4 Titan shifters in the trees above it, and I guess the thing that makes him abnormal is his intelligence. Unlike the other pure Titans around it, it knew that it couldn't climb the tree, so instead it casually laid down and focused its eyes on them, waiting for them to hopefully make a mistake. By that same standard, I guess this Titan here is abnormal too, as it was taking time to just stand still and observe its targets, instead of immediately trying to eat them. Technically speaking, the Dynafritz Titan is also abnormal if we consider that she walked past Bertolt without trying to kill him, although considering the full context of the manga, I think it's fair to say that her usual behaviour is that of a regular Titan. Lastly, as of recording this video, the final abnormal to appear in the Attack on Titan anime is the Wall Titan that was discovered following the fight between Annie and Eren. I plan to do a video dedicated to the Wall Titans in the not too distant future, so for this video all I'll say is that if a pure Titan is the size of a freaking colossal, then that is enough to meet the abnormal criteria for me. Anyhow, there were 1 or 2 random Titans in Trost that I wasn't sure about that might have been abnormals too, but for the most part I think we mentioned everyone that's appeared in the series. If you enjoyed this video, then be sure to drop a like and hit that sub button so you don't miss future content like this, and until the next one, peace out.